Chapter 4 is all about framing. We're thinking about how we're laying out things on our screen. And when we think about how we typically lay things out, we'll think about having a nice solid edge if we have a list or something we want to show on part of the screen. So what I want to do is I want to take that straight edge, which is what nearly everybody does, and I want to apply a curve to it. I want to make it just a little bit different, but still very professional. And that's what we want to do in here. We'll make an arc instead of just having a solid vertical line. Now, when we think about this, we typically want to lay it out in terms of thirds. So we think about our screen, we have a third on one side, a third on the other. Of course, we could do top and bottom as well, but I'm thinking about breaking it up into thirds. And so I want to think in a 1920 by 1080 canvas, a third of the 1920 would be 640, and a third of the 1080 would be 360. So what I want to do is use those as guides whenever we're putting this arc onto our screen in Camtasia. So let's start with these guides. So over here in Camtasia, we'll start by going to our annotations, and I'll create an annotation. Now when I think about thirds, I think I'll really be cutting the screen into ninths. So if I think about 1/3, I said that would make the width 640. So I'll type 640 there. And when I think about the height, I said that would be 360. So let's make both of those defined there, and then I'll just put that in a corner. So now this is my guide. I know that it's exactly 1/3 of the way from each edge. So now I want to lay out my screen. What I'll do is I'll put a screen recording to consume 2/3 of the screen, and then I'll put a list on the other 1/3. I want to have a screen recording as the background, so I'm going to start with that because that's going to be the main part. So I'm going to go to my library and I'm going to find a screen recording that I used previously, and I'm going to drag this screen recording over here. All right, the next thing I want to do is put a background on the right. So I'm going to go to the Camtasia default library, and I'm going to use bokeh dots. And like I said, I just want to have it cover a third. So when I get over here, it should snap right to where that third is, and that's perfect. Okay, so now I have a background, but what I want to do is I want to make it a little darker. And the reason I want to make it darker is because I want the text to stand out. So I'm going to grab visual effects and drag the color adjustment over to it. Now I'm going to drop this contrast quite a bit. I'm going to drop the brightness quite a bit, and not all the way, but I'll find some level that I like that keeps things a little darker. And let me see here. Yeah, I mean, that's probably okay. In fact, I'll drop this contrast even more. I really want to have that contrast down quite a bit, just something like that. So let me play through that and see what that looks like. Yeah, so that's a nice animated background for me to be able to use. Now I'm going to adjust the screen so that it's a little bit more kind of centered there. And if I drag it over to a certain point, it should snap when it gets to where that center point is in our guide. So we remember we have this guide here. So if I go here and move around there, it snaps right in the middle of that guide. So I know it's perfectly, we'll say, centered in this 2/3 on the left. Now the next thing to do is to create this arc. And an arc really is just part of a circle. So we're going to create a massive circle that's going to be larger than our screen. And we're going to use that as a guide for our arc. So back in Camtasia, we'll go to Annotations, and I'll grab this oval annotation, and I'm going to drag it over here to the right. Now, this is, of course, an oval. It's not what I want. I want a circle. And in a circle, the width and the height will be the same. I'm going to use 3840 for both dimensions. And the reason for that, it's just twice as big as 1920. And then I'm going to drag this over here. All right. And I'm going to put it so that the center part of it here on the left is aligned with the 1/3 here. So we could have it centered. And I think having it centered here would be nice. But I think it'll look a little better if we have it offset a little bit to this third. So the next thing I want to do is make sure that this lasts the duration of the video that I have underneath. So we're going to make these all last the same length, and that'll be the length of our bokeh dots. So we have everything play through within 20 seconds. Like I said earlier, I want this arc to be what is displaying on the left. So how do we make this arc be our new edge? Well, as I mentioned before, it's going to be our alpha matte. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click the eye icon, and I'm going to change this to alpha. All right. So now as we look at this, we see this alpha matte playing on the left. This is an animated background for our text. Now this looks good by itself, and I think that we could be done at this point. But I think another thing that might make it look even better is for us to animate this very subtly. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I have the circle selected. I'm going to press Shift A to add my animation, and I'm going to make that animation as long as this clip, or maybe just a bit shy. So just right there toward the edge, but not all the way to the end. Now what I want to do is move this down so that the center where it's at the top 1/3 will now be at the bottom 1/3. All right, now to do that, I'm going to need to select this item here. And I can't see this item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Alt key and click the eye icon so that it solos out that track. And I'm going to grab it, I'm going to drag it down here, and then I'm going to hold down the Alt key again and click on this eye to bring everything back. So because it was at the bottom, I wanted to move it. I just wanted to solo that track, just show that one track by itself. So I used Alt, or you could use the Option key on your Mac to solo out that track. All right, so now that it's down at the bottom, I have my playhead here at the end. I want the end of my animation to have that edge, not at the center, but here at the third. All right, so let's look at what this looks like as we play through. So you can see this just very subtle change as this curvature or this arc is moving from one place to another. And I think that looks really professional. Now, another thing we might want to do is I prefer, instead of the easing to be auto, I like it to be linear. I like it to be a consistent motion. So I'm going to change that animation to linear. I like that animation to be consistent as we move from one end of the animation to the other, rather than speeding up or slowing down in certain parts. And then just to help with the visual, let me go ahead and go to the beginning, and I'll add some text boxes so we can see this a little easier. So here's our text. I'll go ahead and I'll just drag this out to the length of our video. And then as we play through, we can see again that has an arc on the side. It's animating down slightly. We have the background animating, and that information on the side I think looks great. Of course, we would animate that in. You'd probably want to animate this text to slide in from the right. For now, I think that looks like a really professional video. I really like how this is playing out. Now, if you want to continue animating this, perhaps you're talking about this longer than 20 seconds, you could create an animation that just continues to bounce between these thirds. So let's say I'll just use this 10-second animation. I will create a new animation out here. I'll do a Shift A. I'll drag this out to either end. And so what we did in this first part was we had the center here toward the top, and then we went down to here. And then what I want to do is go back up. So I'll just go here at the end, and I'll just move it back up to its third. So as we play through it, we can see this slowly animating an arc down. And then after it gets to the midpoint, it'll animate it back up. And we have this great animation as a background for our text as well. It's easy to see our text back there and keep this interesting motion of our list on the right. So this is a great way to add just a little bit of animation, a little more professionalism to our videos, to do something that's different than what other folks are doing and make our videos stand out. If you like this and you want to learn more, of course, there's a lot more to learn in the Camtasia Pro course. So I've created a fantastic, thorough A to Z course for you, all about Camtasia, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or an advanced user, showing you lots of different techniques. You can find more information at cammastery.com/pro.